I want to start this video by telling you a story. I was maybe 3 to 5 years into some sort of spiritual awakening, and I found myself going to my first music festival. And at this music festival, there were many people who were walking around shirtless. They seemed to be into yoga. They were wearing crystals. And I remember going to an event where a speaker was talking about the consciousness expansion process that they saw the world going through, and where we might be going as a collective over the next few decades and even a few centuries. And I remember hanging around at the end of that conversation. I was wearing normal shoes, black pants and a white t-shirt, looking very everyday. And while I was in the line waiting for the chance to speak to the presenter, a man in full spiritual garb looked me up and down and said, "You're not really one of us. You're not really one of us." And in that moment, I knew and I understood that there was a lot more to truth and spirituality than spiritual subcultures. The reason that I'd found myself in a position where I was open-minded enough to listen to this presenter and engage with concepts that I found were challenging my intellectual, scientifically minded thinking at the time was because I had experienced ego death. I had been studying non-duality for many years, and the reason that I had done that is I had a substance-induced experience of ego dissolution where I seemed to realize that I was not Jack, time was not fundamental, it seemed to be illusory in nature, and this void that I was in, where there was no body, there was no sense of self, there was no time, there was no place, there was no other. It was like I was stuck in the middle of the universe somehow, the middle of the universe being wherever I was, and I was completely out of step with whatever life I thought I had been living. I thought I was 21 with some friends, but I wasn't. I was actually all of reality, and I just convinced myself that I was Jack, who was 21, having this experience. It was a very confusing experience, and I remember spending weeks after that point studying the nature of that experience, trying to make sense of it. And the only things that I could see being spoken about that were even remotely similar were psychedelic-induced ego death experiences. And the only places I felt like I could consult to find people who seemed to understand what I had gone through, it wasn't the Reddit threads talking about the psychedelic experiences, it was Eastern philosophy and Buddhism and Zen and eventually non-duality and many other things that have come across and into my experience since then. So what I want to say very clearly is, from the perspective of this ultimate reality, spirituality is what you bring back in order to integrate the fact that you're aware of this higher truth, but we also live a relative life where we seem to be making choices and the bills need to be paid. And time does go through sequentially, and we have meetings at a certain time of the day. Spirituality exists to, I think in general, it's to help people get there, or even to guard that ultimate reality from most people and to give them something else to hold on to as they live this in-between space between the relative identity and the ultimate truth. And, you know, in that moment when that man turned at me and said, "You're not really one of us," something in me was shattered. Sure, you know, on the egoic level, who cares? A man doesn't really like you, that's okay. But it revealed to me that there are so many people out there who are pursuing spirituality and who think that they are spiritual people, who cannot recognize that ultimate reality. Now, the presenter themselves, when I was speaking to them, the presenter understood. The presenter could see that I was someone who was essentially on a spiritual path, but that I had come there through science and intellect and reason and direct experience. This is a new avenue. For most of our history as humanity, human beings haven't been able to tread a spiritual path in reverse, I want to say. Humans have been identified as their human self, and they've looked to elders and wisdom traditions and sacred texts to teach them about the true nature of reality And it's very rarely something that you get to experience directly. It's something that you're told about. And in some traditions, it's something that you're allowed to inquire into. Now, I don't have the time to talk about all of the wisdom traditions on earth and to compare them. There are many distinctions between them. They're not all the same, but they do come from the same reality. And this is what was very clear to me, and anyone who's had these ego death experiences. You can see that whatever someone is trying to describe through their spiritual path, practice, or tradition, ultimately, they may not have had my experience of transcendence and being one with the universe, but they've had some experience that is like that in some way.